It's pretty hard to believe it's been over 5 years since the release of Days Gone. When it comes to the zombie game genre, you've got some pretty big names like Dying Light, The Last of Us, State of Decay, Dead Island and so on. But one game that often always gets overlooked and unfairly so, in my opinion, is Days Gone. To be honest, when this game first launched, the hype around it wasn't exactly through the roof. The previews made it seem like a decent, well-made game, but nothing groundbreaking. I was expecting it to be just another PlayStation exclusive that you'd play and forget about. But when I gave it a shot back in 2019, I was surprised. The game still had a pulse. Now, it's not a masterpiece by any means like your Red Dead Redemption 2s, your Witcher 3s or your Cyberpunks. Those are the 10 out of 10s of gaming. Days Gone, it's more of a solid 8 out of 10. And honestly, that's pretty great. I would have said this game is underrated, but you know, that word is being used way too much. At first, Days Gone was underrated, but because so many people have started to use that word for pretty much anything, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of the word. So now I like to call this game simply underappreciated. That's a much better word, right? Anyway, with Days Gone, you can feel the game pulling ideas from others. There's a bit of The Last of Us in there, some Mad Max, and definitely a heavy dose of one of my favorite ever TV shows being Sons of Anarchy, which is a must watch by the way. The mix of stealth in this game, the setting of Oregon, the freakers and hordes, and some pretty solid storytelling make it a fun and enjoyable ride. Over the years, the game has built up a cult following. A lot of people love the atmospheric world, the heartfelt, if a little cheesy story, and even the bike mechanics, which were pretty divisive at first. I'll go over that later on, but let's be real, this game wasn't perfect when it launched. It did have its fair share of bugs and performance issues that held it back, something that can massively hinder a game's reputation. Thankfully, playing it today on modern hardware like the PlayStation 5 or a good PC makes a world of a difference. It's a similar situation to Cyberpunk, in that both games launched relatively messy, and over time garnered a better reputation by being fixed. Days Gone on the PC and PS5 has the improved visuals and smoother gameplay, which help it shine in a way that it could not at launch. This is a game that by no means redefined the single player zombie genre or changed the entire gaming landscape, but it did manage to carve out its own niche, offering a pretty enjoyable, albeit imperfect look at life on the road in a world gone wrong. This is Days Gone 5 years later. The world of Days Gone drops you into an empty atmospheric version of the Pacific Northwest, more specifically in Oregon. You know, when I think of a post-apocalyptic setting for a game, this is exactly what I imagine. And whether you feel like it's empty, boring or lacking in content, it's the perfect example of what it's supposed to be. Oregon in this game ticks every box in terms of landscape variety. You've got your large spread out forests, you've got the snow-covered mountains off in the distance, you've got arid deserts, a giant lake, and quite a few well-detailed ghost towns that don't feel copy and pasted. All of these areas really do make you feel like you're playing a post-apocalyptic open-world game. Some games of this genre fail to execute this well. I've seen games like that where there would be plenty of NPCs to interact with, constant electricity all over the world, lively and jumping towns and so on. That to me doesn't feel post-apocalyptic. With Days Gone, even when it's daytime, it's atmospheric, it's eerie, and it's constantly reminding you that survival is not guaranteed. One thing this game does so well in terms of the setting is how unforgiving it is. Everywhere you go, and this is no exaggeration, quite literally everywhere you go, whether it's a random winding dirt road, a thick patch of trees, or an abandoned building or some rundown small town, there's a constant feeling that a zombie, or a freaker as they call it in this game, could jump at you any second, or even bandits. The day-night cycle is also something that this game does well in, as it's not just there for aesthetics. It completely changes how you play. During the day, freakers are slower and stay close to their nests, but at nighttime, they roam in packs and hunt relentlessly. You're constantly asking yourself, do I risk doing that mission at nighttime and deal with the more aggressive freakers, or wait for daylight when they're a bit easier to manage? Spoiler alert by the way, neither option feels completely safe. The weather system is another standout. Again, just like the day-night cycle, it's not just there to look pretty, though it does look amazing. I mean, just looking up at the night sky and seeing how many stars there are is amazing, because remember, this is a post-apocalyptic game, so light pollution does not really affect the visibility of the sky. Anyway, when it comes to the weather, as I was saying, it also affects the gameplay. Rain makes it easier to sneak around because it drowns out your footsteps, but good luck trying to steer your bike on wet muddy roads. Snow, well, I guess it's pretty to watch as it piles up on the ground, but to be honest, it slows everything down and forces you to rethink how you'll tackle certain areas. These little touches make the world feel so real, like you're actually out there battling the real elements of the world. In terms of the exploration feeling, yes, it's relatively empty in that there isn't much to interact with, but at the same time there is so much to uncover. Abandoned houses, freaker nests, burnt out highways and plenty of hidden secrets. The best part is every place place you go to has its own story. I think the word I'm looking for here is environmental storytelling. You'll stumble across abandoned Nero checkpoints or a crashed vehicle and immediately imagine what must have gone down there. That's something the designers did very well when creating this setting. You know, there's the radios in the Nero checkpoints that tell a pretty short but immediate moment of what happened at that checkpoint. Then there are the camps, which are basically your safe zones, but even they have their own peculiarities. Copeland's camp feels like a prepper's paradise, full of conspiracy theories and a live free or die vibe. Tucker's camp is the opposite. It's a labor camp that feels one step away from, you know, outright slavery. And then there is Iron Mike's, which at least tries to bring some order to the chaos. But let's talk about the real stars of the show, the freaker hordes. These things are insane. Just imagine hundreds of infected rushing at you like a tidal wave of death. The first time you run into a horde, I promise you probably remember that exact moment, because I remember almost shitting my pants. Your brain goes straight into panic mode. These freaker hordes move together like a hive mind, and they just don't stop coming. When you fight them, it's not really just about mowing them down with your weapons, but it's more so strategic. You'll set traps, use the environment to your advantage, and hope you don't run out of ammo before they run out of bodies. It's absolutely terrifying, but man, is it satisfying when you finally take one down. And by take one down, I don't mean a freaker, I mean the entire horde. When Days Gone first came out, one major aspect that people gave a pretty mixed reaction to was the story. Some people think the story is nothing special, while others appreciated the emotional side of the story it was trying to give off. I for one find the story to be criminally underrated. 5 years later, it's worth looking back at how the game handles the themes of loss, survival, and rebuilding in a world that's fallen apart. At the center of it all is Deacon St. John, a biker trying to make sense of a post-apocalyptic Oregon overrun by the freaker virus. Now instantly, the game kicks off with a tough choice. As society collapses, Deacon has to decide whether to send his injured wife Sarah away on a rescue chopper or stay behind to help his injured best friend Boozer. Deacon chooses Boozer, hoping he's going to reunite with Sarah soon. Fast forward 2 years and yeah, let's just say he hasn't seen Sarah since. He's still looking for answers whilst working as a drifter, which is basically a wandering mercenary who does jobs for survivor camps to get by. At its heart, Days Gone is about dealing with grief and finding a way to keep going. We can very easily see that Deacon is a broken man, haunted by the possibility that Sarah did not survive. He struggles to connect with people and find meaning in his life. Earlier, when I said that I could see a bit of The Last of Us in this game, a big part of that was due to the flashbacks which both game utilizes. Days Gone shows us what Sarah meant to him, their early days together, their wedding, and the moment they were separated. These moments make the story hit harder because they show a man driven not by heroics or anything like that, but by love and guilt. Deacon's relationship with Boozer is another emotional highlight. Boozer is the last link to Deacon's old life, and when Boozer gets hurt and loses his arm, Deacon's determination to help him just shows how much he cares. Their back and forth banter brings humor to the story, but you know, it also highlights the shared struggles of two people that have lost everything. The camps Deacon works for each represent a different way people try to rebuild after the apocalypse. Tucker runs a strict labor camp where survival comes at a moral cost. Copeland's camp, as I said, is full of conspiracy theories and rugged individualism. Then there's Iron Mike's camp, which pushes for peace and cooperation, even going as far as to make the uneasy truces with the Rippers, who are a cult obsessed with freakers. These camps challenge Deacon to question his own outlook on life. Is it worth trying to trust people again? Is humanity even worth saving? The Rippers, with their brutal and fanatical ways, add another layer to this question. For Deacon, they're not just enemies, they are a reminder of his own dark past, forcing him to confront his limits. While the camps and freakers create the day-to-day drama, the real main story revolves around Sarah. Deacon learns that Nero, the mysterious organization involved in the early days of the outbreak, might know something that happened to her. These missions dig into the game's lore and lead to some of the most emotional moments, even if the stealth gameplay can feel a bit slow. Later in the game, a new camp with a militarized vibe shake things up, but it also highlights a weakness in the story that I will admit is an issue, and that is pacing. Some parts of the plot feel drawn out, while others resolve too quickly, making the story uneven in a lot of places. But regardless, it's still a pretty good story. If you strip everything else away, Days Gone is really a love story. Deacon's entire journey is fueled by his refusal to let go of Sarah, no matter how hopeless things seem. Now, at face value, it's a simple concept, but it works because it feels real. Sam Witwer, the voice actor for Deacon, does a great job of showing Deacon's vulnerability, and Courtney Draper's performance as Sarah adds a lot of depth to their relationship. The story of Days Gone simply asks the question, what does it really mean to survive? Through Deacon's story, the game explores loyalty, sacrifice, and what keeps people going in a broken world. Sure, the writing is not perfect by any means, and some parts of the story are predictable, but there is something raw and honest about the way it tackles these themes. Now, a story would not be a story without characters, and Days Gone in my opinion has a handful of characters that both improve the story, but I would also say make it less appealing. First off, there's of course our protagonist Deacon St. John, who I've already talked about earlier. Deacon is at the center of everything. He's a biker turned survivor who's determined to find out what happened to his wife Sarah. That drive makes him super relatable, and you cannot really help but root for him. Sam Witwer does a great job showing Deacon's softer side under his tough biker attitude, but Deacon is not perfect. Sometimes he's a great guy, and other times he's way too cold. It's a little inconsistent, especially when the story does not give enough time to some of the emotional moments to really land. Boozer is Deacon's ride or die, and honestly he's one of the best parts of the game. Their friendship feels real, and the way Boozer keeps fighting even after losing his arm shows how tough and loyal he is. The only downside is I guess Boozer's story wraps up way too soon. Once he starts to recover in the game, he kind of fades into the background, which is a shame because he's such a strong character, quite literally. Now Ricky is one of the most well-rounded characters in the game. She's smart, tough and has a good heart. She's also not afraid to call Deacon out when he's being an absolute asshole, which makes her a great counterbalance to him. You know, I'll be honest, when I first encountered Ricky and did some of her missions, I genuinely thought the direction of the story would make Deacon and Ricky the relationship, but not Sarah. And oh boy was I wrong. Ricky's relationship with Addie, who's another character in the game, adds some romance depth to her story, and her dynamic with Deacon is pretty interesting as I said. There is a bit of tension there, but it never feels overdone. That said, she sometimes gets overshadowed by the bigger, louder personalities of the story. And speaking of louder personalities, Iron Mike is the leader of the Lost Lake camp, and he's all about finding peaceful solutions. He believes that humanity can still come together, even in a world as messed up as this. While his optimism is admirable, it also gets him into a lot of trouble. His trust in the Rippers, who are a cult of freaker worshipping lunatics, ultimately leads to his tragic death. Mike's ideals are great, but they feel out of touch with the brutal reality of the world, which makes him both inspiring and frustrating. And then there is Schizo. Oh boy, when a game does a good job of making you hate a character, that's when you know he's a good character. Schizo is the guy you love to hate. From the moment you meet him, you can tell he's up to no good. He's manipulative, selfish, and willing to throw anybody under the bus to get what he wants. His betrayal of Deacon and Boozer and his role in Iron Mike's death solidify him as one of the most despicable characters in the game, but he's not very complex. He's just a slimy, one-dimensional dickhead, which feels like a missed opportunity. Carlos, the leader of the Rippers, is terrifying. His cult is ruthless, and their worship of freakers make him one of the most dangerous threats in the game. Now, what makes Carlos even more interesting is that he was once Jesse Williamson, a member of Deacon and Boozer's old biker club. While his backstory adds some personal sides to the conflict, the game simply does not explore it enough. He's scary, sure, but that's it, there's not much depth to him, which feels like a letdown. Tucker runs the Hot Springs camp, and she's somebody that's focused on making people work for their survival. She's strict and harsh, but you can tell it comes from a place of necessity. That said, she isn't very likable. Tucker feels more like a symbol of tough survival than a fully developed character. Compared to other camp leaders, she's forgettable. Sarah, who is Deacon's wife, is the emotional core of the game. The flashbacks to their relationship give you a reason to root for Deacon, and her survival is what keeps him going. When Sarah finally reappears, it's satisfying, but just like many other characters in this game, her character does not get much room to grow. She's mostly defined by her connection to Deacon, and that's literally it, which makes her feel more like a plot device than a fully fleshed out character. So yeah, the characters in Days Gone are a mixed bag. Deacon, Boozer, Ricky and Iron Mike bring some depth and emotional weight to the story, while others like Schizo and Carlos feel a bit shallow. Still, the cast does a great job making the world feel alive and giving you reasons to care, even with its flaws. Days Gone's characters are one of the reasons this game still sticks around with people many years later. Now I want to talk about something that is not well received, but instead it's more so divisive with players that have played this game, and that is your two-wheel Lifeline, or rather the bike that you use throughout the entire game. Now at face value, the bike isn't a standard transportation vehicle that you use and that's it. It's literally your lifeline. You have to manage fuel, keep it in good shape and upgrade it as you go. Early on, you're always looking at different routes on the map around gas stations or scavenging for fuel cans, which adds some real tension because, you know, if you run out mid-drive, it does get a bit terrifying, especially at night, knowing that you could be near a horde, and hordes are a no-go. Upgrades like a bigger fuel tank or better handling make a massive difference, and feel super rewarding. By the end of the game, riding around Oregon on a fully upgraded bike feels amazing, especially when you've got it decked out with some custom paints and parts. The controls are something else to highlight. Riding the bike is pretty smooth, but you know, it still has a bit of weight to it, so it feels realistic without being annoying. Drifting on dirt roads, dodging freakers or speeding through the open world, it's just plain fun. Of course, the bike does have its downsides. At the start, it's slow, fragile and constantly runs out of gas, which can get frustrating, and while running out of fuel in the middle of nowhere is stressful, in a good way, it does become less of an issue as you upgrade. By late game, fuel is everywhere, and the survival aspect fades a bit, which some people didn't really love based on reviews I've seen. Another missed opportunity is the lack of bike-focused missions. Think about how cool it would have been to see more creative ways to use the bike, like scavenging rare parts or doing more unique challenges. Instead, most missions have you riding to your next objective. So yeah, I love the bike in Days Gone. Sure, it's not perfect, but it's immersive, and it makes the world feel more real. In these types of games, I try to be immersed, and a realistic bike gameplay aspect like this is something that I can get behind. Now, not everybody might feel the same, and that's understandable, but I think it's a solid aspect of the game. Outside of the actual main story, there is side content in Days Gone. However, it's not really that revolutionary, but it is well crafted and worth exploring, even if it does feel a bit familiar. The game offers a range of activities such as clearing ambush camps, burning out freaking nests, taking on hordes, and doing jobs for camps. To be fair, these aren't really just for filler, they actually make the world feel more alive and help you out in meaningful ways. For example, clearing ambush camps reveals parts of the map, makes traveling safer by removing snipers and traps, and even unlocks handy stuff like crafting recipes and places to rest. Clearing out infestations opens fast travel routes and cuts down on the number of freakers in that area, which makes exploring less stressful. The Nero checkpoints and research sites are some of the coolest side activities. They reward you with injectors to boost your health, your stamina or focus, which are absolute game changers during combat. Plus they double as fast travel points and give you bits of lore about the outbreak, which adds a lot more to the world. Hordes are another highlight. They're big tough groups of freakers. Taking down hordes also progresses a storyline that rewards you with better weapons and upgrades, so it is worth a shot. If you played some open world games like Far Cry or Assassin's Creed, a lot of this will feel familiar. Some activities like rescuing hostages or bounty hunting are pretty standard and can get repetitive. The camp jobs like saving somebody, taking out a target, or clearing a camp does not have a ton of variety or deeper storytelling. They're more about earning trust and credits with the camp. Clearing nests or ambush camps does make the world feel safer, but the changes can feel a bit subtle, and while the rewards are helpful, they're not always exciting enough to make you feel like you have to do everything in the game. Even though the side content, as I said, is not revolutionary or groundbreaking, it's still something that's really well put together and it fits perfectly with the game's survival vibe. These activities feel like they matter, unlocking fast travel, crafting recipes and just better weapons, and it makes your journey a lot easier and more rewarding. To me, it never felt like I was just doing chores for the sake of it. The soundtrack in Days Gone is one of the game's best features, but not enough people talk about it. A good soundtrack can completely change how a game feels, turning regular moments into something unforgettable. Think of games like Assassin's Creed 2 with its Ezio's family theme, Persona 5 with its Beneath the Mask, or Undertale and the Megalovania. Like those classics, Days Gone uses its music to make the story hit harder. The music in Days Gone nails the game's themes of survival, loss and hope. Songs like Soldier's Eyes by Jack Savaretti, which plays during a quiet moment with Boozer, really make you feel like the bond between the two characters is there. Then there is Hell or High Water by Billy Rafu, which plays as you ride through the mountains, giving that mix of hope and adventure as Deacon finally finds a purpose again. And even the game's ending track, Days Gone Quiet by Lewis Capaldi, who is a great singer by the way. This is a track that's so powerful that it would stick with you after the credits are finished rolling. To me, a great soundtrack doesn't sit in the background. Instead, it makes the game memorable. Think about how Jess Baker's music in Assassin's Creed 2 helped define Ezio's story, or how Persona 5's track gave it that stylish, unforgettable vibe. Even Undertale's music is so iconic that many people recognize it even if they have not played the game. Days Gone, in my opinion, deserves to be in that conversation, as its soundtrack takes the game's emotional moments to the next level and makes the world feel alive. To me, Days Gone was one of those games that could have been so much more. I'm more so talking about the fact that we did not get a Days Gone 2. Whether it was Sony's fault or Ben Studios' fault, I like to think it's both of their faults. You know, the decision to cancel a sequel feels like a huge missed opportunity for both parties. Despite its rough launch in 2019, Days Gone has undoubtedly gained a loyal fanbase, with quite a lot of people loving its open world gameplay, its characters and innovative horde systems. The fact that the game has grown in popularity over time, even inspiring a petition with over 200,000 signatures for a sequel, makes the choice to not continue the series even more confusing. What's especially frustrating is seeing Sony pour resources into projects like Concord, a live service game with a massive budget that flopped. It makes you wonder why they took a gamble on something new that nobody asked for, instead of building on the strong foundation that Days Gone had already established. The first game introduced standout features like the hordes of freakers and the survival-based bike mechanics, which could have been improved and expanded on in the sequel. Instead, those ideas were left behind, leaving a lot of us with a sense of wasted potential. Another sore point is Sony's continued focus on the Horizon series. While the Horizon games are undeniably great, the franchise has been getting everything from spin-offs to remasters and even a VR game. Meanwhile, Days Gone has been sidelined. Imagine if the same attention given to Aloy was also given to Deacon. You know, when people say gaming is turning less and less masculine, I often just laugh and think that these people are complete idiots. But, you know, this is a prime example. Why discontinue Deacon to further expand on Aloy. The survival genre still has so much to offer, and Days Gone could have been the perfect franchise to take it further. The game ended on a cliffhanger, hinting at deeper mysteries around Nero and the Freaker virus. A sequel could have taken us to new locations, introduced better gameplay mechanics, and maybe even added multiplayer features. I've seen many people online share incredible ideas for what Days Gone 2 could have been, like urban environments packed with freakers or more exploration of humanity's fight for survival. Sony has proven with franchises like God of War and The Last of Us that giving a series a second chance can pay off in a big way. A sequel to Days Gone could have been its redemption, much like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood built on the success of Assassin's Creed 2. Instead, the series is simply left in limbo. Sony might have moved on, but the fans have not. And that says a lot about the lasting appeal of Days Gone. So there we have it. This was Days Gone 5 years later. What are your thoughts on the game? Did you play it at launch, or did you wait and play it more recently? To me, Days Gone is one of those games that often gets overlooked, and I've seen plenty of people say it's a boring game that lacks ambition. And while some parts of the game show that, I think it's unfair to say that as a whole. It's a very good game that deserves a sequel, and it's a shame that we're never going to see that happen. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And with that said, I will see you in the next one.